strife, the United Nations is there, and of course the same people run the United Nations who are for the world government. It's just a way of controlling the entire thing.
Let's talk a moment about the events of 9/11 and the war on terror. How is this being viewed by the Bilderbergers, and is it possible they had any hand in, let's just say, the growing war on terror?
Well, I always say that in order to understand 9/11, one must know a lot about the French Revolution and the Jacobean terror. It's the same thing. Just for the record, the war is not being waged against Osama bin Laden. Al-Qaeda is not the enemy, neither is the traveling circus known as the mullahs of Iran. The enemy are us. We, the people, are the enemy. And these people aren't going to stop until they destroy us, until they annihilate us, until they nullify us and take whatever little rights we still have left. So 9/11 was, let's just say, that decision to cross that final barrier of no return and to wage that war against civilization at the cost of all of us. And again, I am personally convinced that, again, I said there are two things in this whole equation. One is money and the other one is energy. One of the key issues for the Bilderbergers over the last 25 years and their meetings has been energy, which has always been the number one issue, the energy control. And money ultimately becomes worthless unless you have energy such as oil, to back it all up. So 9/11 is, again, it's the war against us, the war against terrorists, the war for the remaining energy supplies such as oil, natural gas, etc., etc. And, I think people pretty much do understand that, the Bush administration was behind the whole thing, just as people who understand French Revolution understand that the Jacobean terror was a way of eliminating the true revolution, which would have brought, the second nation state back to Europe. The first one was, of course, the United States.
Henry Kissinger's name has come up again and again. Christopher Hitchens has written about the trials of Henry Kissinger, how he's been such a power player for so many years. Does he really represent the multinational interests that really control the power of the world?
He is very deeply involved, but again, he's not a significant player, and as far as we know who he is. And when it comes to, ultimate power, the people who control it, these are the men behind the curtain. You can't see their faces. You don't know who they are until I start exposing them in this book. So, yes, he's a significant player, but he's just, lackey in the end. He's just a guy you could see who does all the dirty jobs for you. But again, he doesn't have a lot of power because the people who do have a lot of power are invisible.
You attended and got to the inside of the Bilderberg Group meeting in Canada. Tell us a little about that, and what was that meeting going to be?
Well, I've been to a couple of them. I've been to the one in 1996 when they discussed the hostilities in Kosovo, which of course we reported in 1996, 3 years before the war in Kosovo took place. I mean, it's just tremendous when you actually think about it. In 1996, they also discussed the destruction of Canada. And last year, they discussed one of the key areas where, tremendous concern, aside from the Iran, Iraq, all that stuff. They were extremely concerned about, the impending collapse of the housing market in the United States. And we reported, again, it's on record, you could see it, a year and a half before we see what we're witnessing right now with, the wholesale destruction of the housing market. We reported a year and a half ago that people, members were standing up and saying, what will happen when people with a $500,000 mortgage will find their house worth only $100,000? And this is exactly what is going on right now.
Well, you also mentioned there were some plans for the breakup of Canada. Now, I think people would find that quite fascinating. Can you tell us that story?
Well, that took place in 1996. The idea actually goes back to the early stages of the Reagan administration. When Reagan got into power, the the banking community got together and they basically told them, had the United States been a corporation, it would have been bankrupt. We have absolutely no money. But what we can do is we can merge Canada and the United States together into one. Canada is virgin territory, only 30 million people, lots of natural resources. There's a problem because Quebec is a nation that speaks another language. So what we do is we separate Quebec from the rest of Canada, and by merging the two, we can take control of Canadian natural resources. This is exactly what they have been doing since that time. And it took us a long time. Actually, it took me about 10 years to find out. But all these hostilities between the left and the right, the nationalists in Quebec, led by this Parti Québécois, the extremists. When we actually got really into it, we realized that the liberals, the conservatives, the nationalists, the extremists, the anarchists, all top people in each one of these organizations in Quebec province, they were all financed through the Rockefeller Corporation. So, you know, when you see that, you say, you know, I've seen it all. And what they're doing right now in Spain, in Catalonia, which also wants to secede from the rest of the country, you know, I said, it's like, you know, I've seen it all. You know, it's like copy and paste. They're just plagiarizing what has been done in Canada 11 years ago. And I'm sure if I just scratch the surface, I'll find the same man behind the curtain doing the bidding on behalf of the power elite.
The true story of the Bilderberg Group. Daniel Estulin, thank you for joining us in the Iron and Wall.
Thanks so much for having me.